It is my sad duty to inform you that late last night, the Northern Territory reported its first death from COVID-19. An elderly Aboriginal woman in her 70s from the Binjari community passed away at the Royal Darwin Hospital at approximately 11:30 p.m. last night. She was admitted to RDH on November 20 and had bravely battled COVID, including substantial periods receiving additional oxygen. She did have underlying health conditions and she was not vaccinated. On behalf of all Territorians, I extend my condolences to her family and her community at this very difficult time. They are a tight community who care for each other and care about each other. This is a very hard day for them. We have additional resources in place to help ensure the well-being and welfare of the family and the community. I know the clinical team at RDH are also devastated. You did everything you could. She received the very best of care. We thank you for that. We appreciate your efforts, and I know the family appreciate it too. This is the news we never wanted to give. While we are the last place in Australia to have one of our own succumb to COVID, it is very unlikely to be the last time that we have to deliver such news. Today is a tragic reminder of the severity of this virus, a reminder of why we take it so seriously. We won't be releasing any other personal information at this time. This is a period of great sorrow for a family and for an entire community. I know the media and others will afford them the privacy and respect they deserve. And we all grieve with them today. All Territorians grieve with them today. I will now provide the general update. There were 2 positive cases of COVID-19 in Northern Territory in the 24 hours to midnight. Neither of them were related to the current cluster. The cluster remains at 60 cases. The first case is a recent arrival who tested positive in home quarantine. The man and 3 family members arrived from Melbourne on November 29. The PCR test prior to arrival was negative, and his rapid antigen test on arrival was also negative. After entering home quarantine in Darwin, he was alerted by Victorian authorities that he had been in an exposure site and was a contact. He took his own rapid antigen test at home, which was positive, and then his PCR test taken by us was also positive. He and his 3 family members are now at the Centre for National Resilience for care and quarantine. I commend this gentleman. He did everything right, he took it really seriously, and most importantly, he took his obligation to the Territory seriously. The second case is a woman who travelled to Darwin from Adelaide with 2 children. She arrived on Jetstar flight JQ692 yesterday. As required under our recent direction, she had taken a PCR test prior to her departure from Adelaide. While in transit, the test came back positive. As soon as she landed in Darwin, she and her children were transported to the Centre for National Resilience. There will be close contacts from the flight. That work is happening now. Given the wider community spread of COVID in South Australia that is now happening, this morning we have decided to declare South Australia a red zone for the purposes of travel to the Northern Territory. This is effective from 8 p.m. this evening. This means arrivals from South Australia will be required to undertake 7 days home quarantine upon their arrival with additional testing requirements. There were 2,712 tests taken in the Territory in the past 24 hours. The close contacts number is 226. All contacted and isolated, 208 negative results returned. We've added some close contacts based on our interviews with the positive case from Lajamanu. Before I pass to Dr. Payne, I would like to say a few things about this bloke. He was initially a casual contact, but we have since linked him to a positive case from the Worley Clinic. I want to pause on that. We believe he contacted the virus on November 15 while at the clinic receiving his 2nd vaccine dose. I want to pause on that. That's a huge effort to go all the way on a bus from Lajamanu to Katherine to get a 2nd dose. That means his positive result was picked up late. This means his positive result was picked up late in his infection. This man was a model citizen. I will go as far to describe him as a hero. He did everything right. He was double vaxxed. He wore his mask everywhere, using hand sanitizer, using the check-in app wherever he went. To be clear, this is not just verbal feedback. We have seen CCTV footage of his exemplary behaviour. He is the legend from Lajamanu. His conscientious and cautious behaviour has certainly slowed spread and possibly stopped it altogether. This is proof one person doing the right thing, being the best, can genuinely save lives. So far, his wife and other contacts are testing negative, but obviously they are high risk, so they'll stay in quarantine for a while longer and keep getting tested. I'll now pass to Dr. Payne.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Minister. Thank you for coming, everyone. First of all, can I just convey the sadness that that we feel at the passing of the lady that we've been caring for, and convey the sadness of the staff who've been looking after her for nearly 2 weeks now. Her condition deteriorated yesterday, somewhat suddenly, although she had had serious COVID for some weeks now, some couple of weeks. Just acknowledge the staff and thank them for all of their work to support her, but acknowledge the sadness of the Binjari community of losing an elder. It is what we feared. It's what Dr. Heggie feared when you saw him some weeks ago now. If I could pass to Lajamanu, we're very happy with the way things are going there. And thank the Chief Minister for acknowledging the behaviour of the man who has tested positive and who was double vaccinated. I'd like to talk about vaccination now. I want to assure people will be anxious now. I understand that, and they'll be anxious about getting vaccinated. They can get vaccinated anyway. All of our remote clinics have vaccine available. You should have no concern about the availability, and you can just go to any clinic and there will be people there to vaccinate you. So please be assured, if you're anxious about getting vaccinated now, you will have the ability to get vaccinated. Thank you. And I'll just say one last thing. Unfortunately, the elderly lady was not vaccinated. Thank you.
Sad day for the Northern Territory. We've been in touch with the family of the woman that passed away. We pass on our heartfelt condolences. We feel you're sorry. Her family extends not only from Binjari but to Bulla and Pine Creek. We facilitated a FaceTime call just before she passed last night with her family. Incredible work from everybody on the ground, the compassion shown towards her. She passed in peace, and it's a testament to everyone that we've tried so hard. Unfortunately, this death does apparently have links to a breach of Chief Health Officer directions. It appeared to be the seed that started the spread of COVID within the Northern Territory, and as such, Major Crime are now undertaking an investigation. Because of that, I won't speak any further in respects of it. I know that you will all understand that we've got to go through the process of a fulsome investigation, and I don't want things going in the public domain. Suffice to say that the Northern Territory community can be satisfied that the Northern Territory Police are investigating the causation and links that may have been to the passing of this lady overnight. The teams have been exceptional. In Lajamanu, the heat has been in excess of 40 degrees. They've adjusted to those conditions. They're now undertaking tests in the early evening and darkness. Over 350 tests taken yesterday. Enormous compliance from the people of Lajamanu, and a final round of tests to be obtained today. So I want to pass on my thanks again to a community that is being nothing short of exemplary in its compliance and the support of the teams on the ground. Wastewater testing for Lajamanu has also returned negative, so that continues to be encouraging, and obviously the positive individual will await some further test results for them, but it's all looking encouraging at this point in time. So in short, a very, very sad day. It's what we feared. It's come to realisation. We've done our absolute best to try and mitigate and prevent COVID from entering the Northern Territory. So far, down the period of time that we've been dealing with this, don't lose heart. The numbers are exceptionally low, but it's a strong reminder to everyone, compliance is the best thing that you can do not only for the Northern Territory, but to the world community. Thank you.
Chief Minister, you flagged that this was something you always wanted to prevent, a death in a remote community, particularly of an elder within a community. That's now happened. Just how sad are you about that?
This is a day of reality. We've always known the threat of COVID. We've seen the tragedy of it occur interstate and overseas. I know there are Territorians who have lost loved ones to COVID, but it hasn't happened here. We don't want to see it happen here. We've done everything we could 18, 19 months into this to prevent COVID being in the Territory and to prevent what we know the consequences of COVID are. I thank health, police, all the rapid assessment teams, all the Aboriginal community child health organisations, all the non-government organisations, everyone we've been working with, Robinson River, Binjari, Rockhole, Larger Manu, and all the staff out at RDH. There's a lot of people who've been involved in this recent outbreak to prevent an outcome like this. Extraordinary efforts, knowing early, acting quickly, and I know a lot of them will be feeling it. But the work they've done, not just now, but for 19 months, really has seen us here in the Territory delay this moment for as long as we could. I wish I could have delayed it another day, another week, another month, next year, but it is here. And we're prepared as well as we can to make sure we can deal with COVID. It's a sad day, and it's the day of reality for the Territory of COVID.
Do you think it'll happen again? That we'll lose more people to COVID?
I think it's going to be impossible to, yeah. We know it's going to become endemic. We want it to be as mild as possible, as manageable as possible. If you look at 2018, 2019, the flu season, I can double check this for you if you like, but we had something around 2,000 plus flu cases, and I think it was 7 deaths from flu. That's where we're going to end up with COVID on a basis. You know, next year, the year after that, you know, you'll get cases, you'll get hospitalisations, and you'll see deaths. It will become endemic. We just want to delay it as much as possible. Vaccinations are our best choice now. We've obviously had borders for a long time, and we'll keep very strong and safe on our borders. But the best protection is personal protection and it's vaccination. But that's where we're heading with COVID. That's been the plan for a long time, is to make sure that we can deal with it. We'll deal with COVID in the same way that we deal with anything in a public health system. We're almost there. I think that's one of the hard things about this current outbreak is you can see the vaccination rate. It's quite incredible, really, in the Northern Territory. You can see the vaccination rate. You can see the improvements that are happening with the treatments. You can see we're almost going to get a 5 to 11-year-old approved vaccine, and with parents' consent, we can look at children. We're almost there.
What sort of counselling is being provided, not just to the Binjari community, but also to the health workers at the RDH?
I might ask Dr. Payne to talk to the RDH, and Police Commissioner can add to what's happening in Binjari. We've got physical welfare teams out on the ground, and we're doing a lot of this work already in other ways. And at RDH, there's always good, strong support networks in there, and we've got some we've got an ability to put that support around staff. But I know Dr. Payne's been talking to the RDH people. I know the Commissioner's been talking on the ground, so I'll pass Dr. Payne first.
Thank you. The first thing I'd say is that the staff will be supporting each other. They met this morning to discuss the passing of this lady. Dr. Didier Palmer, who's the General Manager of the hospital, has been in touch with me this morning, and he will be providing support for his staff. It is particularly significant, of course, that this lady, being an elder in this community and being our first COVID death, they've struggled so hard to save her over the last couple of weeks. They've given her all of the care that we could and all of the best treatments that are available worldwide. and yet they were unable to save her. Unfortunately, being unvaccinated, I'm afraid that was always a possibility and always a high risk in this circumstance.
Dr. Payne, how is the other patient that's in hospital?
The other patient is requiring oxygen intermittently. That patient became ill at day 10, which is often what happens. And so we will be doing exactly the same. The patient is younger, and we'll be giving them maximal treatment.
He's in his 40s. Is he vaccinated?
Yes, I believe he's partially vaccinated. I have to check that, actually.
Also, federal data indicates that there are 8 people, as of yesterday, being treated in the hospital care system in the Northern Territory. Obviously, that would now currently be at 1. Can we just reconcile how that gap is existing between the federal data and the local advice?
Yeah, my understanding is that my recollection is, and I've just checked with Dr. Palmer, that we have had 8, and of course we've got 2 at the moment, and that's about consistent with what we'd expect. It's about 10% of people.
Okay, sorry, you just said 2. I'm assuming that is separate to the woman who's passed away.
No, sorry, 2, including the lady that's just passed yesterday evening, late last night.
What's the impact of vaccination on severity of illness and possible death?
So the vaccination radically reduces the risk of death. That death in vaccinated people is about 1/10 of that in unvaccinated people. So it gives very good protection from death and also very good protection from serious illness. So unfortunately, we will see in unvaccinated people these serious outcomes.
In terms of and this may be a question for the Chief Minister or the Police Commissioner, but the investigation, is that to do with the original border breach that sparked this outbreak, or is it to do with...
I think the Commissioner will answer that. Thank you.
Or is it to, and then if I can just follow up to that, or qualify it, or is it to do with any potential breaches of rules within Binjari?
A death has occurred in the Northern Territory linked to COVID. COVID had not previously been in the Northern Territory in an environment where it couldn't be contained. We will now investigate to identify what the causation may have been that ultimately led to COVID being contracted by the lady that passed away last night, and whether there's any criminality in relation to that, and that's all I will say on the investigation.
Have you been discussing this with other interstate police agencies?
That's all I will say on this investigation. As it relates to the Binjari community, our people are on the ground, as are health people. There's also not-for-profits. We've been working with the entity that is associated to the community. Overwhelmingly, they are aware that there is significant support to them. And as I say, the advice we've already got is that the funeral will ultimately be held in the Binjari community, and we share the sorry that they're all feeling at the moment.
Will there be any easing of restrictions so people can attend sorry business and do that kind of thing in their own?
We've already made some provisions in respects of the step from the hard lockdown to the lockdown arrangements that have occurred, but what we have to be critically conscious of is that we don't want any more people contracting COVID, and whilst the current indication in Binjari through the latest wastewater is that it's negative, we want to be ensuring that people's safety is paramount. That's been actively communicated since last night with the community, and they're continuing with their exceptional compliance.
Dr. Payne, just with the wastewater in the Bicentennial Road catchment in Katherine, has that returned a positive result today as well?
We're waiting for another result to come back today, but the last result was positive, so it has remained positive. We're watching that closely, as you know.
There was another catchment that also returned a positive signal yesterday, I believe. Was that also latest that we have?
So it's the 2 positives in Katherine are Chambers and Bicentennial. They're adjacent, and those have been the ones that we've been keeping an eye on closely. Other than that, we don't have any other wastewater positive that we're concerned about.
Do we have extra tests in Katherine as a result of those positive wastewater results yesterday?
Yes, that's what we've been doing all the way through this, and thank you for the question, because it's an important opportunity to ask the Katherine community to continue to come forward to be tested if you're symptomatic. It's vital that we do this now. I've appealed for the community to do this on a number of occasions. It is very important that we get to the bottom of the explanation there. Once people start to return into the community from quarantine, it will become less easy to interpret. At this stage, it's almost certain that there is something else happening in that community that we haven't yet identified. It may be someone that we didn't previously identify as a positive that's still shedding, and that's a more innocent explanation, but there may still be someone that's positive in that community, and I don't want to alarm the community, but I do need them to take this very seriously and come forward, please, and get tested if they're symptomatic.
AMSANT and the AMA have been pretty steadfast on their calls around delaying reopening until we hit certain vaccination targets around 90% rather than 80%. Are we going to see off the back of this death that we rethink our plans around reopening?
I don't think in relation to this death that it changes things. Unfortunately, that is a death that was expected, and we would expect more serious cases and more deaths. However, I would say that I agree with AMSANT that we're all aiming for a much higher target of vaccination. We know that 80% will give us some comfort in terms of our capacity, but we want to push beyond that. We all agree we want to push beyond that target. And we are doing so widely across the territory. And in many communities now, you can see, we've even heard reports, as you've heard earlier, that we've had reports of people queuing up for vaccination, and hence my emphasis earlier on the availability of vaccines. You can get vaccinated. Excuse me. There is availability. Please come forward.
Will that change our reopening plan, though?
No, at this stage, there is no intention to change our plan. We will hold to that, but I would say we obviously will be assessing the situation. But at the moment, there is nothing to change that, in my view.
How concerned are you about this traveller who tested positive while he or she was on a flight from Adelaide?
Yes. Excuse me. Something's caught my throat. The system we set up, the testing system, was designed to pick up that exact issue. So that's why we introduced the testing for South Australia. So I suppose that's an indication of our system actually working. Similarly, the system that identified the Melbourne man as well, that's part of our system to detect those. So we've got those defences in place, those protections in place, and today we've also then made South Australia a red zone. So we will continue to actively monitor and also actively introduce measures to protect the community.
You can pause and give some more first.
Well, I'll ask you while he's having a drink. It might be more question for you anyway. Just in relation to South Australia, why is it necessary to make the entire state a red zone? I mean, there might be places like Coogee, Port Augusta, where there is no virus and those people might want to travel to Northern Territory.
Well, Dr. Payne may choose to refine it at a later stage, but at this stage the advice from health is around the spread and community transmission that is occurring. We don't know how far it has occurred. If it settles down and there's confidence that it's not in parts of SA, Dr. Payne may change his advice, but at the moment it goes to the spread of COVID in South Australia.
Dr.
Mr. English is a third and fourth language in a lot of Aboriginal communities. How is the government reaching out to people that don't speak English into the communities?
We've done a lot of work in language over the last 19 months, and there's a whole new campaign's gone out again in language, as I understand it, I think in about 17 different languages. It's gone out across the Northern Territory. It's one of the challenges that we've had here in terms of Aboriginal people and the languages that they use. There may be parts of Australia, WA, Queensland's got a similar experience with the spread of different language groups. So obviously we've done a lot of work in language, getting out the message and the importance of being vaccinated. That's work that will continue. You've got to keep adjusting your message, and you've got to keep getting out in the right language.
Your government's reporting a first dose vaccination rate of 95%. Are we on track to hit 100?
So basically once it gets to 95, and Dr. Payne, I want to add to this, once it gets to 95, you essentially stop counting because there's movement issues and variation, so you kind of don't stop cutting past 95. I think Darwin's already at 95%. First dose. I'm not sure where Darwin's second dose rate is actually. But I probably have to stop looking at that since we've hit what we need. In places like Darwin and Alice, we were definitely well past 90 on the first dose rate, and double dose rate would be catching up quite quickly behind that. Wouldn't be surprised if it's hitting double dose 90 in those areas as well. But Dr. Payne can add this if you like. They basically stopped counting past 95.
You've been quite head-on in a lot of these addresses, particularly in the last 2 weeks, about people who have spread misinformation. I wonder about the people who have fallen victim to misinformation, and do you feel any sympathy for them being caught up in essentially lies and very harmful pieces of misinformation spread online?
Yeah. I think you can never not feel sympathy, but we are 19 months into dealing with COVID. I think we're 8 months into having the vaccine available. There is a significant amount of accurate information that is out there, both here in the Northern Territory, but even globally. There's lots of really accurate information that is available for people to consume. There is a point in time where you might still have sympathy, but there is absolutely a capacity for people to have the correct information. And my advice to anyone out there is, if for some reason you're still hesitant on all of that, pretty much everybody I know or we know would go to see your GP and have a conversation with a professional in this space and get that personal advice from a doctor. It is easy to, in my opinion, to get the right information and make an informed decision.
Do you think those pushing misinformation bear any responsibility for this death?
I think Dr. Heggie was really strong on this the other day, really strong on this. The motivation of people who push that message, and a lot of that message originates from places like America. But maybe I shouldn't describe. I don't know what their motivations are, but they're not good. They're not good. I think they carry a lot of weight for this. Political, ideological, identity. I don't know why the hell they go out of their way to try and push serious and significant misinformation onto people, but there is no good motive for it.
In light of today's news, what are your thoughts on people who still plan to gather tomorrow?
Well, they've got the freedom to do that. I've obviously expressed my significant disagreement with their cause. I think the vaccine can not only save your life, it can save the life of others, loved ones, strangers. I think just look to the legend from Lajamanu. The legend from Lajamanu. Genuinely, this guy went out of his way to get a second dose. He followed all the advice, not just the directions, all the advice about masking up, checking in, hand sanitisers, everything. We've got this extraordinary case. This is quite incredible at the moment. We've done over 700 tests in Lajamanu to find one positive person who went out of their way to do the right thing. The chances of spread within a household of COVID, as we know, is quite extraordinary with Delta. Like, households essentially always become positive. We're not seeing that in Lajamanu. We've got this one person who tested positive, and somehow he has, through all his efforts, seen, at this stage, no spread, but possibly no spread of COVID in Lajamanu. That's a community saved of the actions of one person who went out of his way to get a second dose and has done all the right things. Absolute legend.
Dr. Heggie,
The AMANT has said that the funding situation for the Royal Darwin is by and large actually a Commonwealth responsibility. They haven't been providing enough funds. In light of the fact that we are going to see COVID become endemic in the Territory, are you going to push the federal government to start upping its share of funding the NT's health system?
This is a long-running national argument, so the Territory is not alone in having this argument about health and hospital funding. There was a previous agreement under a previous government. If you go back, so this argument existed prior to COVID. We would obviously welcome additional funding, but I want to be clear: we've dealt with the reality of what we've got. And all our plans around COVID, the aggressive suppression strategy, what we've done on our borders, what we've done with our vaccination effort, what we've done with our rapid assessment teams, and the testing plans we've got in place, everything we've done has been about how can we make sure we deal with COVID within the settings that we've got. So I get it. I'd love to have more funding and a whole range of things, not just health, out of the Australian government. But I've got to, in dealing with COVID, deal with what I know and what we've got. And we've done everything possible to deliver that. The Doherty modelling gave us a feel for what it was going to be, but again, it's theoretical modelling. We've now had a capacity to test our public health and social measures, our testing, our vaccinations, everything, our responses, the lot that we've had planned for Robinson River, Binjari, Rockhole, Katherine and Lajamanu. And at the moment, it looks like those plans do work, and we can keep COVID within the capacities of our health system. That's what it's showing. Now, could I have more funding and invest? Love to do it, but all my plans are based around what I can control and what we know.
When you talk about the actions of an individual, like the large Manu, what do you think about people that lie on their border entry form coming into the territory as individuals?
I think I need to be careful on what I say, and the Commissioner has obviously indicated there's going to be, into this cluster, and now that there is a death, a major crimes unit investigation. So I'll be a little bit general. We make these decisions, we put these directions in place, we implement them, enforce them, do all this work to minimise the risk to the community. It's not there to inconvenience you. If you have to wait a little longer for us to be a little safer, that's the right thing to do. That is absolutely the right thing to do. You know, we're not putting these rules in place. We're just trying to keep people safe and just be upfront with us, do the right thing. I think there's a couple of examples I gave today that were people doing the right thing. The person from Melbourne and the person from Adelaide both did the right thing. Our system worked, and we got on top of those cases. Do the right thing. Just absolutely do the right thing. And it's not about you, it's about others. I just want to see I'll go back a step. There has been some selfishness. But the overwhelming majority of Territorians and people coming to this place have absolutely put others before themselves. Maybe I want to concentrate on that. I just want to thank everybody out there who's done the right thing and been the best, and that is overwhelmingly what we have seen. Territorians have been the best. Thank you.
Everyone.